Thank you very much for introducing me in Spanish. I'm really pronouncing my surname correctly. We will talk about it later on. Thank you for inviting me here to tell you a little bit about the work we do in the Danish Agency for Culture's digital office, especially what we are trying to achieve that are linked and related to the research-based institutions, libraries, and in some cases corporate businesses in Denmark. I'll start by giving a description of DEF and explain why it is housed in the Agency for Culture. Then I will tell you why. Let's see if this works. Then I will tell you why my department in the digital office has been created, and you will get a brief overview of the customer portfolio, including a short description of the Danish healthcare sector, as all Danish public hospitals are among those I tend to in my work, and they constitute the vast majority of sales in my department. Along the way, I will briefly touch on the types of licenses my clients demand, and finally, I will describe the current tasks in my office and give a few examples of previously completed tasks. The Agency for Culture is an agency under the Ministry of Culture, which means that we are part of the public administration in Denmark. The Agency for Culture employs 260 people throughout the agency's 15 highly specialized divisions. The agency carries out the cultural politics of the Danish government within the visual and performing arts, music, literature, museums, historical and cultural heritage, broadcasting, libraries, and all types of printed and electronic media. The agency works internationally in all fields, and the travel of Danish arts and cultural life across the border is a top priority. I work in a subdivision of the digital office named DEF. The four letters stands for the Danish abbreviation of Denmark's Electronic Research Library. And for convenience, I'll be using the Danish abbreviation DEF in this lecture. DEF is, as previously explained, a national consortium created to buy electronic licenses on behalf of the members. My office is a bit like a shop in a shop. It is formed on a business model that doesn't really have an appropriate English term. The closest I can get an explanation of this in English is under the heading commercial activities. You might have a wording of it in Spanish, I don't know that. But the word is slightly misleading, as we do not conduct business of a traditional commercial nature, but primarily deals with and take to customers and companies that are either fully or partially public, or in the case of the private, separate divisions within the companies. The licenses that we are handling doesn't allow the users to make use of them in a straightforward commercial way. They have to have some sort of research involved in the use of the licenses. Denmark is, in comparison with Mexico, a very, very small country. We are, for those who are not aware, we are located on the top of the European continent and in the bottom of the Scandinavian peninsula. The population of Denmark is 5.5 million people, which is around a quarter of the population here in Mexico City. Denmark is often named as one of the world's happiest countries. The American television network CNN has tried to find the answer to what makes Denmark to that happy country. And after the visit to one of our largest hospitals, CNN concluded that it must be because of the fact that in Denmark it is free for the public to be treated in a hospital, and medicine are also for free whilst hospitalized. It may well be that this is one of the reasons. It certainly can't be because of the weather or the high cost of living. Anyway, I've just brought this example along here today because the Danish hospital system is one of the largest stakeholders in the work in my office. Denmark has never been a great industrial country with lots of resources. Agriculture in Denmark is quite a large contributor, and we have a handful of large international companies such as Label, Knoledge, and Mesa. You may have heard of those. But beyond that, we most primarily create our living as a knowledge society. And it is particularly to support this condition that the idea behind DEF was formed. And to understand the work of my office within DEF, you may need to know a little bit about DEF in general. DEF's duties are wide-ranging, and our primary and most important task is, through our work, to contribute to the most effective and optimal use of research-based information in Denmark. This is partly done through a license team engaged in the procurement of electronic licenses to academic and research libraries and institutions, both public and private. I am located in the license team, where I, along with my colleagues, am working to negotiate licensing agreements containing the most relevant content at the best possible conditions for the lowest possible rates for the participating institutions. We also handle the administration of the licensing agreements, including billing, renewal, IP administration, archiving, access to relevant contractual documents, and help desk tasks in relation to the institutions. DEF is owned jointly by the Ministry of Higher Education and Science, the Ministry of Education, and the Ministry of Culture. Our overall mandate is written in the Danish Finance Act, where it says that DEF is to provide support for joint development projects, infrastructure development, and to manage the joint purchase of licenses. The Agency of Culture is the hosting institution of DEF, and the operational responsibility for licensing negotiations is therefore placed at the agency. So, as you can hear, it is the Danish government's desire to have DEF negotiate and conclude contracts for electronic licenses on behalf of the research libraries. The joint buying of licenses is cost neutral and without additional cost to the institutions that fall within one of the three owning ministries. The only thing that DEF invoices the libraries is the pure cost of the licenses as we negotiate them with the publishers. DEF currently manages nearly 200 different contracts with about 80 publishers for nearly 225 different institutions. The agreements mainly covers product content such as databases, journals, and ebooks. Our yearly turnover is 175 million Danish kroner, which is roughly 32 million US dollars. And as you can see from the slide, approximately 60% of the turnover comes from the three major suppliers in the market, which may be Elsevier, Wiley, and Springer. And the remaining 40% is made up of a number of other smaller suppliers. The development of the turnover in the DEF license area from 2001 to 2013 is summarized on this slide. The rising curve reflects several factors, including the addition of new institutions and customers, and an increase in the amount of digital resources purchased. But it also reflects a great increase on the cost of the licenses annually imposed by the publishers. As mentioned just previously, DEF is owned by three different ministries, and only institutions belonging to these three ministries are eligible to receive DEF services in license negotiation free of charge. DEF was founded in 1996, and historically also institutions not belonging to the three owning ministries had been allowed to join the consortium at no charge at all, and that included several private companies and institutions. In 2011, the steering committee behind DEF decided that the number of institutions outside the ownership group had reached a level that called for an alternative solution for these. Moreover, it was necessary according to Danish law that DEF, as a public authority, not acted anti-competitive in relation to the increasing number of private clients, meaning that we at DEF were acting against the law if we were to offer a service for free that usually cost money at private providers of the same. The steering committee decided to establish a business model in which institutions, in addition to the actual price of the purchase license, are charged a small administration fee calculated as a percentage of their purchase. That is typically 3 to 5% depending on the company size. Seeing as we are not allowed to take advantage of our governmental status and thus outcompete the private vendors, we had to construct a model very similar to the one used by others in the markets. A consulting firm was asked to prepare a basis for the management of these customers based on the Danish governmental rulings on commercial activities. After some thorough analysis, the Division of Commercial Activities was established in 2012, and a full-time business consultant was hired to operate the new system. In October 2013, I joined in this position, and today I'm running the department more or less on my own with the help of an external service partner. When the new scheme was set up, the customers affected had to be transferred over to the new system, obviously. Despite criticism from a number of the customers that they now had to pay for previously free services, we succeeded in getting 96% of the initial customer base over to join in the new system in the Commercial Activities Division. And today my department has an annual turnover of around 26 million Danish kroner and a revenue of about 1.5 million Danish kroner. And if you want a similar figure in US dollars, you just have to divide it by roughly by 5. The customers are expressing great satisfaction with the services they receive, and most recently our key accounts, the Danish regions, which represents 75% of our annual turnover, has renewed their contracts with us. This governmental business model dictates that over a 4-year period we have to balance financially. You can have fluctuation over the period, but by the end of the 4-year period, which is by the end of next year, the Commercial Activities Division has to present its own ministries with healthy black figures in the financial statement in order to prolong the period for another 4 years. Earnings in the Commercial Activities Division derives only from administrative expenses added to the price of the licenses and startup fees. As you can see from this example, where I've drawn up an example of a fictive new customer's first year and a new customer's second year compared to an existing customer. And just for this example, they are both buying two licenses from Elsevier in Australia. And on the new customers year 1, as you see up here, we only charge them 5% administration fee for the pricing of the licenses. And when you have a new customer, you have to pay 4,600 Danish kroner per license as a startup fee. And this fee vanishes when you get to year number 2. As you can see, the prices are the same, which is not very likely in the real world, as all the licenses are always getting more and more expensive. But in the year number 2, the previous and new customer is paying the same as an already existing customer. And when we invoice our customers for this amount, say this example, the amount, then we can split the payment up into we split the payment up into two payments, one in May and one in October, allowing the customers to take advantage of the prolonged credit. And we can offer that as a state consortium, since we don't pay interest on the money that we are prepaying to the publishers on behalf of the customers. As mentioned earlier, my biggest customer is the Danish regions. The 5 Danish regions are the administrative and operational owners of the Danish hospitals. We have 31 public hospitals in Denmark as of July this year, compared with 39 in July 3 years ago. So the trend is pointing towards fewer and larger hospitals, which most likely will create some challenges in the way future licensing negotiations will be conducted with the publishers. Many of them have a tendency of basing their licensing prices both on the number of hospitals and the number of relevant users, which in this case obviously is the doctors. I doubt that publishers will decrease their pricing, though there are to be fewer physical units of hospitals in Denmark in the years to come. And most likely the publishers will find a way to continue to make money on the licenses that they are selling to the Danish hospitals, however few they might be in the future. As you can see from the map, the hospitals are evenly spread across all 5 regions, with the highest number in the capital region, which is Copenhagen. A large group of hospitals are affiliated with one of the country's 4 major universities. They are brought out in Aalborg, Aarhus, Odense, and Copenhagen. And consequently, intensive research is taking place in these hospitals. Research in general is also being carried out at most of the other hospitals. And throughout the country, health professionals and students need to continually access the latest and most current knowledge in their specific fields. To obtain this knowledge, the Danish regions created in 2007 a so-called Region License Group. And this group has their licenses through DEF. Because the Danish regions doesn't belong to either one of the founding ministries of DEF, as previously explained, the responsibility for the administration of their license portfolio belongs to my department. The region license group consists of representatives from all 5 Danish regions, 2 to 3 from each region, and it is mainly librarians from hospitals participating in the group. They consult on the various needs with the medical staff in each hospital, and subsequently addresses me with what licenses are required. It is then my job to obtain licenses on the best possible terms, for the best price possible, and to play the role as the secretary of the group. The regions have an annual license budget of approximately $4 million, and they typically buy license packages from major publishers such as Springer, Wiley, Oxford, and Elsevier. The DEF Consortium has already agreements with those publishers and many more, and therefore I generally don't buy separate licenses to the hospitals, but instead I use the existing DEF agreements with the major publishers. There are a few exceptions. For example, only the Danish hospitals have purchased the product called Clinical Peak from Elsevier, so that contract was dealt and handled by me on behalf of the hospitals. In addition to the nationwide licenses for the hospitals, the individual ones also purchase a number of licenses through my office. It's typically individual journals, additional packages, etc. These agreements are negotiated by me, but they are only possible if the DEF Consortium already has an agreement with the given publisher. We are happy to take on contracts with new publishers on request, but it's not all publishers who are willing to offer a consortium discount. Without any discount, we cannot offer our customers any added value, so subsequently we refuse to take on the new accounts. In commercial activities, we currently have 39 customers. As you can see, if you understand Danish, which you don't, and if you know the customers, which you also don't, you can see that they roughly fall into 2 groups, that you can see. There are a group of institutions within health science and the rest. In our portfolio, there are also, as mentioned earlier, a number of private companies. They are obviously in the market to make money, but since most of the licenses we purchase in the consortium are based on academic and research-based knowledge, it is only the research departments in the private companies that I'm dealing with. The brewery in Carlsberg is an example of this. I operate their research department, while the rest of Carlsberg purchases a number of additional licenses through private vendors in Denmark. Given that we are a public institution, we are not allowed in any way to outperform the private players in the markets for licenses. That also means that we are unable directly to seek out and steal, you could say, customers from the other vendors. However, if a customer gets in touch with us of their own account, then of course we welcome that request and treat it in an attempt to add the customer into our portfolio. Growth through innovation on the basis of licensed scientific and research-based information is an important part of the strategy within DEF, and that's why we are working continuously to expand this. Currently we have several projects in the commercial activities division. Along with Springer Verlag, we have partnered with Danish Industries, an association of industrial and other companies in Denmark, to invite a number of small and medium-sized enterprises to access the content in Springer's R&D package. Access is made available as a free trial for a 4-month period, in which the use will be monetized in order to use the statistics as a contributing factor to help them decide whether to continue after the end of the trial. Access allocate per use deposit account set up by Springer in association with my office. The company then buys a packet with a predetermined number of downloads that may be renewed or extended as they are in use. The goal is for Springer to gain new customers, for Danish industry to act as a facilitator for their members, and for us at DEF to meet the Danish government's strategy to make research-based knowledge available to small and medium-sized enterprises for the overall benefit of innovation throughout Denmark. I know that the GIST collection in England are currently working on a similar project, but as far as I'm aware, they have experienced quite some problems with the technical setup between the four participating publishers and the chosen companies within the pilot. However, seeing as we are DEF through the organization Knowledge Exchange are having regular talks and meetings with consortium colleagues in the Netherlands, Germany, Finland and England, hopefully we can benefit from each other's experience in this and other fields. Over the recent couple of months, the Commercial Activities Division has received more and more inquiries from individual municipalities who would like to gain access to the same healthcare knowledge as the Danish regions are gaining through us. To follow up on these inquiries, we have started negotiations with the main organization of the Danish municipalities in order to investigate if a business model can be made to offer national licenses for all of Denmark's 98 municipalities, much like the model used for the Danish regions. We also have a project in the pipeline with a provider of press clippings called Infomedia. We will try to put together a package that sells relevant press clippings in addition to a license purchase as a kind of pay-per-view. A lot of small and medium-sized businesses pay Infomedia to monetize relevant press clippings, but these companies do not necessarily have either the time or the opportunity to seek out relevant research-based knowledge. And if we can find a way to coordinate their press clippings with access to various other research-based content aimed at their specific need, it could hopefully help to raise the awareness of how much scientific knowledge is actually available at reasonable costs, just waiting to be read and used by the companies in their daily work. In parallel with the activities in the Commercial Activities Division, work is being made in the steering committee for DEF to facilitate a number of major projects. For instance, they did a project called Borrow a Librarian. It was designed to test a specific model of how research librarians could be an active player in the development of new business. In the project, a librarian from a research library visited the selected companies who then would talk the ways of knowledge discovery, along with getting help in solving a series of practical knowledge discovery tasks. During the visits, the librarians' understanding of corporate work increased, while the companies were made aware of the value of the service and expertise that libraries can offer. Unfortunately, this project is no longer active, and the effects of it has been very difficult to read. This is a good example of the fact that many companies and businesses in the private sector often find it difficult to spend the required amount of time to let the project live on after we, as the initiator, have put out of the project. But we continue on a gauntlet to meet the Danish government's innovation strategy, and in the hope that practice may make perfect along the way. Thank you very much.